All right, we are live. This is Craig LeBlanc, the Doorman with the Bitcoin Daily Show. I am one of 12 show hosts that produce content on the Bitcoin Daily 7 days a week, 8 to 10 a.m. every day. And on Sunday, we have a 10 to 12. And we meet a lot of great people that are producing unbelievable content and doing great things, building out the Bitcoin community. And Jeffrey was one of them that I met early on when I started the working with the Bitcoin Daily, and he is the co-founder of Mass Adoption and also the founder of Freedom Fest, correct?
That's correct.
So I just wanted to welcome Jeff to the show, and maybe we can get to know him a little bit better and his background and kind of what he's working on, where that came from, and then a vision for the future of all the stuff he's got going on. So welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you, Craig. Thanks for having me, and happy to be here.
Yeah. So maybe tell us a little bit about your journey into Bitcoin. How did you, or actually, let's go even further back. Tell us about your childhood growing up, so we can understand your background. What's the makeup of a Bitcoiner from birth? What does that look like?
Well, unfortunately, I hate to admit, but I'm a boomer. But for my first 55 years, it was a fiat-minded, a fiat bro. I grew up in a middle-class family in a nice town in Massachusetts. I was a good boy. I went to school. I got a job. I went to college. I got a job. I was going down that whole path. I worked for an account. I had my degrees in accounting. So I worked for a CPA firm for a couple of years, realized that wasn't a great place for me. Although I learned a lot, I quit. And then I ventured out on my own and became my first business. I ended up selling it to private equity in 2011. And so I jumped from corporate America to entrepreneurship in the 90s. And from there, I haven't had a boss except my wife and my parents since back then. In 2020, my businesses got closed down because of the pandemic. And something didn't feel right to me. And I ended up just closing my business down completely. I had 3 retail locations I closed on the flick of a switch. My whole team couldn't believe it, but I just said, that's it, I'm done. And that after working 7 days a week, 365 days a year for 30 something years, that pause, like everybody at the beginning of the pandemic, had a lot of time on their hand, and the world was in chaos, and the world was ending, and we were locked in our houses and all this stuff. But it gave me time to actually think and research. And I sort of grasped onto Bitcoin. And the more I read, I couldn't believe what I was reading. And I just went down the rabbit hole in 2020. And I haven't looked back since.
Man, fantastic. So how did, was there anything in your history do you think kind of prepared you for going down that rabbit hole? Any upbringings or any other backgrounds that you might have contributed to that?
Well, that's a good question. I think my makeup, the fact that I worked in corporate America, I couldn't take it. I just couldn't take that environment. Something about me was always been kind of a rebel, I guess. And I quit. I didn't have an alternative. I didn't have another job. I just said I'd rather wait tables than spend 9 to 5 every day in an office looking at someone else's business, doing the books for someone else's business, and I'm just getting paid my salary. So I think that makeup gave me this. I've always, I guess, looking for alternatives and looking for other solutions. I guess I've never been satisfied with the status quo or a believer of the status quo. And once you go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, you question every aspect of your life. And I think I was just prone to kind of view the world that way. And so I'm grateful to have found Bitcoin to eventually illuminate my internal feelings about the world is screwed up. And there are a lot of lies and deceit and corruption going on. And I could never put my finger on it until I journeyed down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. So.
Now, what were some of the early contents that you kind of consumed? Was it all YouTube, or did you read any books or got onto any channels?
Well, so I started, Anthony Pompliano was one of my main guys at the very beginning. There's a lot of people have a lot of opinions about him, but he is a great educator. He's a salesman, so we have to remember that. He also got me into BlockFi, which I don't want to go into, but was not a terrific experience. But that being said, so Pomp was a great educator of mine at the very beginning. Of course, Bitcoin Standard was the first book I read. And then, I kept on, I started dabbling, put $100 in, $200 in. And then Michael Saylor and Robert Breedlove, that What is Money series was immense. But in August of that year, Michael Saylor invested $250 million from MicroStrategy. It was the first investment he made. He went public with it, for a public corporation to have it on their balance sheet. And once Saylor went in, I went all in. I mean, when I mean all in, I went all in. All of my liquid net worth went into Bitcoin at that point, because I said Saylor is an MIT astronomical or aeronautical engineer. He's a rocket scientist, and I'm like, if he can figure this out. And also, he had wrote a book in 2007 called the Mole. Sorry if I'm getting lengthy here, but this is really the story. Oh. He wrote a book called The Mobile Wave in 2007, predicting what's going to happen with Google, Microsoft, Apple. And I said, if he can see the future in 2007, what was going to transpire with mobile, then he surely, when he's putting his bet on Bitcoin, he clearly can see what's going to happen. And once Saylor went in, I just went all in.
Yeah. I had a very similar journey. I watched that whole series, and then I actually watched the Booth series right after that, just to get more of the philosophical approach. But I enjoyed both of those. Those got me started as well, that Robert Breedlove. So yeah, to the audience, if you haven't seen that, Robert Breedlove did, what was it, like a 9 or 10 hour?
Yeah, it was like a 9-part series. I can't remember how many, but it was long. But you mentioned Jeff Booth. So I'd say the top educators over time for me have been, Jeff Booth is just top notch. Every time I listen to him, he expands my worldview. So I recommend the listeners to listen or watch or read Jeff Booth's book, The Price of Tomorrow. So there's a few books that I've read that I think are instrumental. I've made my son read them. Bitcoin Standard is one. These are the four or five books I recommend to people. Bitcoin Standard is one. Jeff Booth's Price of Tomorrow is another. Sovereign Individual, The Fourth Turning, and then The Creature from Jekyll Island. And I recommend The Creature from Jekyll Island to a lot of my fiat brothers, because if you don't, in my opinion, if you don't understand that there's actually a problem with the money, then you won't really be looking for a solution, which Bitcoin is. So I think you have to start at first principles and realize, we've been indoctrinated since we've been in nursery school that, hey, inflation's normal, it's acceptable, all of this stuff. You got to realize, you got to read Creature from Jekyll Island to understand what a grift the whole thing is since the onset of the central bank in 1913.
And who wrote that? Was it Griffin?
Yeah.
Griffith? I can't remember.
Edward Griffin.
Edward Griffin. Yeah, I remember listening to the audio on that one. Is how I got it. And then he's got some, I think he's still alive, correct? I don't think he's passed away.
Yeah, he's alive. He still does some podcasts and stuff.
Yeah. Maybe we should get him on this show, because I've recommended his book and stuff to a lot of people.
It would be amazing. And there's another book I put down a little bit lower on the scale, but I've actually had calls with him, is John Perkins' Confessions of an Economic Hitman. He actually worked for the government for years. He was an economic hitman. And to translate what an economic hitman is, he works for the government. He gives loans to third world countries, promising, here's your money. But they give them these loans that they know they can't pay back. So they end up basically taking the country's resources. They enslave the country. So it's a great book to read also, to just show how corrupt. Every government's corrupt because there's people involved and people are greedy. But with the fiat dollar, as opposed to having money on hard money tied to something hard, then you're always going to have corruption. And that's where we are since 1971.
Yeah, I think doesn't Alex Gladstein cover a lot of similar stuff as far as
Gladstein does, yeah. So Gladstein covers it. Perkins goes in depth because he actually was one of the people responsible for it. And eventually he realized what at the beginning he thought he was doing good because that's what everyone told him. But eventually he realized he was just enslaving people, and he quit and he wrote the book.
Mhm.
So,
And that still is pretty. That system's very healthy today, if I'm not mistaken.
oh, 100%, 100%.
Um, so okay, so then now that you're into Bitcoin and you're like, I'm all in. What do I choose to create? What's that journey?
Well, thanks for asking that question. So I guess I've been a creator. I mean, I've started since I've been age 21 or 22. I've started my own businesses. I've created many companies throughout the years. So I've always been a creator and creating companies and brands. So it's just my nature. I'm like, what can I build here to contribute to this community? Just like Jeff Booth says, don't spend time in the system that is sucking your energy that you don't really endorse. Spend time in the world you want to be in. And I kept on listening to that going, I have to take my energies and build something in this community. And honestly, Craig, it's been life-saving to me. It's given me purpose. It's given me meaning. And I really feel I'm doing, not me personally, but we're doing work that is probably the most meaningful work you could do. Everything else, I forget who said it, but someone made the comment, everything is downstream. Oh, Breedlove said everything is downstream of money. And he's right. So let's start with money. And that's kind of where we're focused, fixing the money. So I just feel I'm in the right place at the right time. I have teenage kids, and I want them to grow up in a prosperous, free, sovereign world, not the one where we're headed. So that's why I fight.
Yeah, I agree. If we are compensated in money for our work and our thoughts and everything we bring of value to the market, and the money itself is corrupted, then it's just so hard to get ahead when the system's built on theft. And I think that's a point that Jeff Booth hammers home constantly. Like the current system is built on theft, so stop pouring energy into it.
That's right.
And so now you're ready to build something on this new system built on integrity. And so what are you supposed to build?
Well, so I ended up, I was interacting with some people on Twitter. There was a woman in my neighborhood who DM'd me and said, oh, I like your tweets, whatever. I went into the whole thing with her and said, well, you got to meet my husband. Who's your husband? He ends up being an ex-BlackRock employee that lives 10 miles from me. So we started talking. He came over and, we fell in love the second that we met each other. And he and I said, well, let's put together a small little get together and get this thing going. We ended up doing a small high net worth meetup, I guess, or luncheon at a country club in my area. We had probably like 20 people there. We were fortunate enough. He was so connected that we had Larry Lepard and Greg Foss come and speak at this country club in Wellesley, Massachusetts. And I didn't even know who Larry and Greg were back then. So it was an amazing event, but I put it on YouTube. And then I got a DM from someone else and they said, well, how are you putting on this event? Like, who are you? It was, I run the Massachusetts meetup group. How did you throw this event? I said, let's meet for coffee. We met for coffee. And that's my co-founder, Greg. And we put he was a real estate entrepreneur, sold his business. So we were both builders, and he's older like me, myself. And we put our heads together and said, let's build this as a real business. And from there, mass adoption was born.
So what exactly is mass adoption? Is that just the meetup group, or what else do they do?
Thanks, Greg. So mass adoption, we do a monthly meetup group. We do a quarterly speaker series. We've had amazing speakers as Greg Foss, Larry Lepard, BJ Dichter, Jason Mayer, Luke Broyles, and this is pertinent as to what just went on at Nashville conference with JFK's speech and Jason Lowry. We had Jason Lowry speak at our event a couple of years ago before anyone even knew who he really was. Mm-hmm. So So we have a great speaker series when we're very happy and lucky to have Jason. We had a steak dinner with him the night before. So we do monthly meetups, we do quarterly speaker series, and then we do an annual festival. So that's pretty much what Master Adoption does.
Man, he got a big shout out during the convention from JFK. That was huge.
That's what I'm talking about. I couldn't believe it, Craig. I'm like, oh my God, this is the guy that we had a steak dinner with 2 years ago. That the president or the presidential candidate is talking about in front of thousands of people. It was amazing. It was amazing to see that vision. 2 years ago when we had it with him, people would tell me, how can you have Larry on? He's a spook. He works for the government, all this stuff. And I'm like, it's America. He can come and speak and people can make their own decisions. So from there, we had that much confidence in him and vision in him. And then fast forward, he's being talked about being in a presidential cabinet, which is crazy.
Wow. When I heard his message, I latched onto it. I think it's one of the few interviews that Robert has done that I've listened to 3 times because it's so packed full of red meat. I love his angle and his thoughts. I think it's a very powerful, very not well understood, not well distributed message.
Well, so Craig, it's complicated because I heard it live. He presented his thesis to our meetup group. We probably had a couple hundred people there. And it's so in-depth and deep, very hard to comprehend in the first taking. It takes a few kind of looks to kind of get it. Just so people know, that speech and the steak dinner the night before is on the Mass Adoption YouTube channel if people want to search it out. So we got Larry presenting his thesis a couple of years ago before he wrote the book, before he was anything. He just was a student at MIT trying to get this thesis, trying to get approval to do the thesis on Bitcoin. So it's raw stuff. So people could check it out on our Mass Adoption YouTube.
Yeah, channel. I'm going to go check it out and try to share it on my Twitter page and on the main account as well, because I love his content. And it seems like sometimes I'll mention his content and people are a little touchy about it.
That's what I mean. When we announced he was speaking, I got a lot of nasty messages. So I fought through it. I'm like, listen, this is Bitcoin. People, we don't decide anything. Let people speak. And, as Max Kaiser says, you don't change Bitcoin. Bitcoin changes you. So.
Right. Yeah. And I think we should be okay with people listening and sorting out for themselves what they want to believe and not believe, and not be part of this censorship crowd where that can kind of pick winners and losers and who gets to be heard and who doesn't. I'd rather
precisely, Craig, precisely.
All right. So then that's Mass Adoption. So how about, where did this Freedom Fest idea come from?
Well, I've always been a little bit crazy in the entrepreneurial spirit, and I've had successes, but I've also had many failures, which I think are as important, if not more important, in someone's career, because those are teaching moments. And if you're intelligent enough, you'll take those failures and learn enough and turn the next thing you do into something successful. So I've always had that spirit. And I said to my partner, we now have a great team for Mass Adoption. I mean, we have large language model engineers. We have computer science PhDs on our team. We have content writers that write for Bitcoin News and Bitcoin Magazine. We have a videographer on our team. We have an energy guy on our team. So we had a great team. And then we were getting great traction in our meetups. And then we were getting great traction with our speaker series. We were lucky enough to have those great speakers. So it just felt natural to keep building. And I said to my partner, let's do a festival. I've spent a lot of time at flea markets and festivals and stuff from my old career. Let's do a festival. We did it 2 years ago in Boston. We had no idea what we were doing, but luckily we had the support of a lot of great Bitcoiners and the support of the Bitcoin community. And this was a couple of years ago. I don't think we could start a new one now because there's just so much action going on. But we were lucky enough. We had the support of Larry Lepard, of Greg Foss, of BJ Dichter, of Anders. Anders was our MC. We had Michelle Weekly. We had Haley Lennon. We had Surfer Jim. I can't even remember. We had a lot of great people that came and supported and spoke at our first festival. So we luckily got it off the ground. There weren't too many bad things that happened. So it was overall a great success. And from there, we said, well, let's do it next year, which was this past May. I think we had another festival. We moved the festival to Connecticut out of Boston because we wanted it to be more New England, more regional. We wanted to get people from Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, New Hampshire. So we threw it at a great venue in Connecticut. We teamed up for the second year in a row with Texas Slim and the Cattleman's Feast. So we helped Texas we were both launching at the same time. So he's been an intricate part of what we're doing. And I completely support what the Beef Initiative is doing, what he's doing. His message, for the people that don't know it, they should look up the Beef Initiative in Texas Slim. His message is a little bit downstream of Bitcoin, but it's very, very important. His message is that our food supply is being poisoned and corrupted, and it's being taken over by governmental agencies. And I can't talk about it as well as he can, but I recommend people looking at what he's doing because you got freedom money, and Bitcoin allows you to have a low time preference. It allows you to examine what you're doing and make proper decisions. And one of those things would be health, and one of those things would be eating properly. So that's why I completely support what Texas is doing, and I think it's a very important message for the audience.
Yeah. We had him. Tracy actually had him on our show, Texas Slim, and then we also he came on a second time because it's just so dense. Like, it's really hard to cram everything he's got into one show. You could really do a series on what he's working on because much like you don't understand money, and that's why you don't understand Bitcoin. Right. And so that's probably why you recommend, and I do the same thing. I recommend books that almost have nothing to do with Bitcoin, but give you some type of foundation to understand the problem. Well, the same goes for the food chain and cattle. It's like you have to understand the problem before the solution even makes sense.
That's right.
And so he did a great job of explaining the current state of affairs and the history of our cattle industry, along with our whole food industry. And then we also had a guy on the show that wrote, I think, Fiat Foods.
Oh, Matthew.
Yeah.
I read the book. I've been in touch with him. He's actually going to be speaking right now. Tentatively, he's going to be speaking to mass adoption at one of our speaker series. His book is very, very important too. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. And so maybe what we could do is, leading up to your shows, we could maybe interview your speakers here to try to get excitement and primed, and you can come see this guy speak live or something, just because, God, their content is just not well distributed enough. I think we get in these echo chambers and we think that everybody knows this, but it's not true.
I completely agree. And actually, Craig, I think that might be a good idea right now. Tentatively, I know this is going to go on here, and I'm not putting pressure on Matthew, but he's going to be up in New England sometime in the fall. And we've put a couple dates on the calendar. So we've penciled it in. So Craig, let's keep in touch because we can coordinate that and you guys can do the interview the day or week before.
Just to kind of give, like I said, just to try to build momentum to mass adoption. If you've got a speaker coming up, we can kind of excite people, maybe get better attendance or something, because not to mention sometimes people just are across the other side of the planet, can't even attend, but at least they can hear what you got going on.
But I do recommend that book, Fiat Foods, is, it sort of carries on for where Safedine, he touched on the food, just like he touched on modern art and the food. But Matthew it's amazing the receipts or the backup he has for everything he's talking about. It's a really well-written book.
Yeah. And you can almost do a copy paste on education. It's like money, it's food, it's education. I mean, you can just go down a list of things that have just gotten cheapened and cheapened and cheapened. Or architecture is another great one.
1,000%.
Yeah.
You bring up that, I don't want to get too much on a tangent, but you bring up, I have young kids and they're in high school. So if I had to do it over again, I would definitely homeschool them. But we're the horse is out of the barn now. But I'm actually reading a book right now, and You know what? I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I had something good, but I forgot. So
Yeah, that's
that's,
okay. It's. I think the main point is that fiat destroys a lot of things. When you start storing energy in weak things, then whether you're storing, you're building an educational system or foods or anything like that, even politics, or it's like it just destroys so much when what you're building is cheap.
I got the thought back. You talked about education, and I'm reading a book. It's about Socrates, but it's about critical thinking.
Yes.
And it goes into what critical thinking means and what critical thinking is. And it is the exact opposite of what our education institutions do. The exact opposite. There is no room for critical thinking. And as George Carlin said many years ago in one of his comedy skits, the government doesn't want critical thinkers. They do not want people to think for themselves. And that's the indoctrination. This is just my opinion, so it's not fact, it's just my opinion. But that's the indoctrination you get. They're not building critical thinkers in our schools, in our education system. And that's why people, they believe the mainstream media, they believe everything they read on the internet. They're not critically thinking. And that's just one spoke of the wheel of problems the world is facing, not just the U.S.
Well, I think we have maybe become obedient taxpayers, and that is not what I don't think that's what the early founding fathers had intended.
Well, they never intended for an income tax. So yes, you're right.
All right. So I think we've gotten far away from what is the true American spirit, and it really just has infected everything. So I think that's why
Bitcoin allows us the tool to get back to what the founding fathers envisioned.
That's right. So maybe if someone were to go to the Freedom Fest, what would they experience? Tell us a little bit about the actual, on day one, this is what you'll see. This is what you'll get out of it. I know now y'all are, it'll be what, another 6 months before y'all have y'all's next one? Have y'all set a date?
We have a date. It's early June of 2025. Mm-hmm. We have an amazing, we keep on stepping it up. This event for next year it hasn't been announced yet. We've given a few teasers out there, but sure. It's going to be on an island. Tickets are going to be scarce. It's going to be in a camp setting. When I mean camp, I mean water skiing, canoeing, hiking, archery, camp stuff. So it's be a combination of a retreat, of health, family. We want families to come to it. So that's what mass adoption is all about. It's about it. So if you came to one of our festivals, one, you would see great speakers such as Larry Lepard and Greg Foss, and Dennis Porter was tremendous this year. BJ Dichter, David Foley who runs the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund with James Lavish, was one of our speakers this year. So just amazing education from them. You also get to meet them in person and talk with them one-on-one, which is what we envision at the camp next year. You're going to be spending 3 days with these amazing people, just hanging out with them, cooking s'mores on the campfire with BJ Dichter, whoever. So you would get great education. It's a huge sense of community. Everyone's in a good mood. We do a big cattleman's feast every year, so you'll get great education from Texas Slim and Johnny, his guy who does all his butchery and cooking. There's activities. This year we had a big parkour course, and we taught people how to do parkour. So parkour is basically, we call Bitcoin freedom of money, and we call parkour freedom of movement. So we kind of tie everything together. We taught people, you're never taught how you're actually supposed to fall, how you're supposed to jump. I mean, that's a natural thing for young kids. But after that, everyone's sedentary, sitting in a cubicle, and they don't move their body. So our festivals are more than just Bitcoin. That's the foundation. But we call it a freedom festival, but it's powered by Bitcoin. It's not all about Bitcoin. That's just what powers the festival, to allow us to give this great education about health. Texas Slim is about health. So it's really an all-encompassing event that is more than just sitting there and watching speakers, say stuff that you could just watch on a podcast. So it's much more than a podcast.
And I really like that approach that you're taking. I've always felt kind of like we were talking right before the show started, how I wished I had more time to just socialize with the Bitcoiners at the convention. I felt like the convention almost became a distraction from meeting the people, and that's kind of what I really wanted to do. So I'm glad to hear that you're setting up an event where you can actually get to know people and socialize throughout the whole event.
I mean, can envision sleeping in a bunk in a cabin next to Luke Broyles as your bunkmate.
Yeah.
Getting up and going water skiing with Luke the next day. Like so it's really a Bitcoin lifestyle.
Yes.
So that's where we're setting us apart from all the other conferences and all the other stuff. We're very, very different.
Yeah, I like that direction. Yes.
I hope you come next year, Craig. You have an open invitation.
I was so close to coming this year. I had some family stuff that just would not let me move.
Next year, we're not going to let you off the hook, because next year is going to be absolutely mind-boggling.
Oh, yes. Well, as long as you keep speaking that language, that is my language. I love to more have a more personal, intimate setting where you get to know the people. That's obviously what drives me. I do like I enjoyed all the vendors and the different speakers and stuff, but when I think of going with a group of friends, I'm not the one that votes for going to watch a movie. I'm more, let's go play basketball together.
Right. Let's go do something.
I like to do things a little more, interpersonal. Okay. So then that's coming up next year. Anything else where do you see this on both of these, the vision going as far as, maybe 5-10 years down the road?
But when you say both of these, what are you discussing?
Well, like mass adoption is kind of one, and that's more or less the meetups with the quarterly and the speaker series. And then of course you've got Freedom Fest.
Well, I actually forgot to mention, we did a documentary of our year of building up to our first Freedom Festival. We showed it in a movie theater maybe 6 months ago. That's on our YouTube page too. So we do the meetups, we do the festivals, we did the documentary, we do the speaker series. I see this next festival we're doing on this island. We're going to do it every year on the same date. And eventually we're hoping to make this island become a Bitcoin citadel. Wow. That's our vision.
Is it potentially up for sale, or maybe that's just a goal? Who knows?
I don't want to go too far into it, but sure. we do see a pathway to make that happen.
Wow.
I will say the island is in the state of New Hampshire. Now, I know you're not from around here, but the state of New Hampshire's state motto is live free or die.
We had an old Bitcoin OG, and I mean like 2010 old, and his name was Mandrick. I don't know if you know Mandrick.
Yeah, name sounds familiar, but I don't know.
Well, to show how old he was, he paid, I want to say 7 or 8 Bitcoin for a Trezor.
So it's not a pizza, but he's close.
Yeah, it was. And he said back in those early days, everyone was trying to spend Bitcoin for things. And they would go get more fiat, replenish their Bitcoin, buy more stuff with Bitcoin stuff. But apparently there was some type of early Bitcoiners that said, let's pick a state that we can all go live in. And they voted, and New Hampshire was the state that won. So there's a group of Bitcoiners from the early days that moved to New Hampshire to build somewhat of a community.
So I'm not surprised. So New Hampshire is famous for live free or die is their state motto. They're famous for their bike week, Laconia Bike Week. It's the 101st running of their motorcycle Harley Bike Week. Once a year they do it. Their first day next year is our last day of our festival. So we're hoping to get hundreds of Harley riders come to our festival. But also there's an event called Pork Fest, which runs for about a week up in New Hampshire. And that's where it's like Bitcoin Woodstock. That's where people camp out, tent out. It's in New Hampshire. And that might be where a lot of the OG Bitcoiners are in New Hampshire. There's a very vibrant, freedom freedom-loving community up there. So yeah,
Right.
so we're lucky enough to throw our event in New Hampshire next year.
Fantastic. So then on a general like global scale or national scale, where in your opinion, where do you think this is going as far as I know the politics scene has just exploded. It's like all of us saw the ETFs coming because we just saw the paperwork being filed, but it seems like out of nowhere, politicians just dogpiled onto Bitcoin and I would have thought it'd have been another 2 or 3 cycles before we had this much support.
So I'm ambivalent or have many thoughts on that because, and this is my opinion. So people can fault me for it or try to show me where I might be off. But I do think the politicians they'll say anything to get elected. I do think RFK Jr. actually probably does have his net worth in Bitcoin. So I do believe him when he says that, but he's not going to be elected. So I think Trump, he showed his speech, at least in my opinion, he was just another campaign rally for him. He was told what to say about Bitcoin with his final closing statement saying, enjoy your Bitcoin and crypto and have fun, showed me that he doesn't really understand Bitcoin. So I don't put too much hope in making it the global reserve, treasury asset for the United States, because, and the bottom line is we need to remember from first principles, Bitcoin, beyond a global reserve currency, if it's actually a medium of exchange, it competes with the US dollar. Mm-hmm. So I don't see the pathway to become that without a lot of fighting, which is what we're doing. But I don't see the US blessing that because you wouldn't allow your competition to take over. So I'm not sure what the pathway is going to be, but I do think it's all game theory, and I do think we're going to win. It's just we're not quite sure what the road's going to be. But I'm always been skeptical, but I just don't believe everything I see. And you know what, Craig? To me, it doesn't matter. I'm all in. I buy Bitcoin at any price. So all that stuff is sort of noise.
Jeff Booth has a great outlook, which I somewhat agree with his, is you're really voting on who's going to control the system built on theft this next 4 years.
That's it.
And it really doesn't matter who wins because they're going to just use it to steal.
That's what I'm saying. So if it's RFK, if it's Trump, if it's, the Democrat, it doesn't matter because, again, and only maybe 2% of the people will understand this, and all of the Bitcoiners will understand this, but the rest of the world doesn't. This is all theater. It's all puppets. Our world is run by central banks, and everyone else is just playing a role in it. And so it doesn't matter who's in office. They'll continue with fiat money printing, continue with the continual theft every day where wages don't match inflation, where there's monetary repression. So there's no winning. It's only getting worse. And until we've had this technology, until 2009, where the white paper was written, we've had no tools. Civilization, humanity, couldn't escape it until now we have the technology. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing.
And with that being said, let's differentiate from America being, America, the government, the politicians, and America being the people. How do you think the people are doing as far as the Americans waking up, understanding what Bitcoin is? In your opinion, where are we with regards to that?
Well, if I apply that to my personal life, and I have a nice group of friends, and they're seeing it a little bit, but I said to some of my friends, look, they just talked about it. 2 presidential candidates just talked about its importance. Like, do you still think I'm that crazy?
Right.
So I said that to my wife. I'm like, I know what you think, but so it's starting to become more mainstream. I do think it's a long journey. One of the issues is, Craig, if you're getting paid in the fiat system and you have obligations and you have debt, you got to stay on that hamster wheel to pay the bills. And that's, you won't open your eyes to see what's really going on because you're not incented to. You're incented to keep your head in the sand and just pay the bills. I mean, unfortunately, most people are have more debt. They probably have a negative net worth, and they just have to keep going every day. So they don't have the time to research Bitcoin, nor do they have the means to shun it. Like I was fortunate enough in 2020 that I was in a financial position where I could just close my businesses, and I had to encounter some other challenges like what am I going to do with the rest of my life, and I'm depressed and all that stuff. But I was out of the system.
Yeah.
Most people, and so I feel very fortunate that I was able to do that. But 95% of the people can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a similar experience about 13 months ago where I stopped working altogether for fiat. And then I'm like, well, now what do I do with the rest of my life? And so I've been kind of fumbling around trying to figure out how I can add value to this new system I believe in so much, but it is quite a change. I'm so used to dealing with, debt structuring and leveraging and playing in the fiat world. And it is quite different over here. But I can tell you, at least as far as the people, they're I love working with Bitcoiners. I love working with the community, and everybody seems to be not just easy to work with, but like-minded, and they're not. I guess we have more community builders that really want to see the whole system succeed versus everybody looking out for themselves. But at the same time, everybody is able to take care of themselves because how else would they have gotten in Bitcoin if they weren't? It seems like a lot of Bitcoiners are very self-reliant people.
Yeah, yes. But Craig, I mean, you've done an amazing job with the Bitcoin Daily Show. I was talking to you at the very beginning before it was even kind of up and running.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been on your shows. I've watched what you're doing. I jump into the rooms, and like I always say I could never build my mass adoption team in the fiat world because everyone's concerned. What am I getting paid? How much am I working? When am I working? But if you translate that to you and what you've done with Bitcoin Daily, I mean, what do you think? Could you have assembled that team in the fiat world? I mean, how did you do it?
Yeah, I mean, so to that point, it really has been a team effort. Still is a very team effort. I mean, as far as me just getting up and pressing go live, but then as the other hosts started to really come in and contribute, it just became so much more rich than because it had different perspectives, it had different energies, it had I think the shows just got so much better because it was so hard for one mind to just have
Right.
um 16 hours of content a week.
Well, you got to be an expert in every in energy and mining.
Right.
That's right.
Right. And so as some of these other show hosts started to come and contribute, I really was able to take a back seat and become a student again. So like our most recent ones are Deanna and Joel in El Salvador, who are real educators that have spent a career in education and writing books and college professors. And so they speak on such a high level versus me trying to construct what a 101 would want to hear. I've got professors and educators that have dedicated their life to early learning strategies and styles and how to deliver information, which is to me just a much richer. And then I can say that about every single show. Every show and every content creator does such a good job of bringing a richness and a powerful message that only a team could. There's no way I could pile in all of that information into my head.
but so I agree with you. But my point was, could you have done that in the fiat world? Like you couldn't even found these people. Like you'd be arguing and negotiating with everyone. No one would, half of them wouldn't even show up. Like it's just amazing. It happened with our team too.
Mm-hmm.
People have worked. We've had weekly calls for 2 years now. No one's gotten paid a penny, and we're building great stuff. And it's just amazing. And I've made such great friends. I mean, literally great friends with a lot of people. I mean, I have probably 15, 20 people from the Bitcoin community that I consider close friends.
Me too. Me too. It has become somewhat my family.
Right.
I spend so much time with these people every day, and I enjoy working with them and building with them. So if you look at payment, I would say my payment has been just community. That's what it's been for me. And I feel like we're working on something almost almost like you would volunteer for a church. You're just working to feed the poor and be a good person and be around good people while you're doing something good. And so I've built other church organizations. This seems very similar to that. It's almost like we're doing something for the greater good of humanity.
Right.
It also helps us in the process. Plus, we get to hang out with people who also want to do something. So you're hanging around high quality people.
Right. Right. I agree completely. And maybe one day we'll be able to monetize this in 10 years when Bitcoin's at $5 million. I know Michael Saylor would say, Jeff, don't undersell it, but I'll just say that. But we'll see.
Well, I mean, for anything, I can say building this community and building what I've built as part of the team has increased my conviction. It's made my hands, maybe from paper hands or lettuce hands, all the way to diamond hands, to where I'm in on everything. I have no other assets in life but Bitcoin. And I don't think I could have gotten there without my teammates, listening to them, listening to the community, listening to the speakers. There's something about getting in there and building something that just makes you really commit to it, rather than just maybe being a consumer of Bitcoin content. I would encourage anybody listening, find somebody like Jeff or Mass Adoption or Freedom Fest around your area and just go work with them. And you'll see what I'm talking about. How getting involved is huge.
But I completely agree. And a lot of my normie people that I'm trying to help along the journey, I think a big step for them is, and I know, self-custody hardware wallets are the ultimate end game for everyone. So everyone should not be having their coins on exchanges and have it in cold storage. But that being said, I think for my experience is I take some newbies and I say, do you have Cash App? And I'm like, just buy $50 of Bitcoin and Cash App. Start there. And then once they own $10, $20, $50, and then they see it go from 50 to 60, although they can see it go from 50 to 20. But when they see it go, they get a little skin in the game. It's like anything, Craig. If you have an event and you say there's no admittance price, well, then people won't value it. But if you say it's $1 to get in, then they'll look at it differently. So skin in the game, $10 in, $20 in, $100 in, then the research in the education will start to flow a little bit better because they have skin in the game. They'll start paying attention to it more. It's like if you got a new car and all of a sudden you see that exact car everywhere, all over the street, the same street. I'm sorry, you see the same car all over the road. Oh my God, another Honda. You start seeing Hondas everywhere. So, get a little Bitcoin, and then you'll start seeing everything's Bitcoin. And then all these articles, you'll start paying attention more. So my suggestion would be, even if you know nothing about it, put in $100.
Right.
And then you'll start your journey. And if anyone does that and doesn't like that experience, you can personally DM me and I'll give you $100 back, because there's no way you're going to not like that experience.
Yeah, I agree. It's with anything else, you just got to take that first step and turn thought into action, because it's in action that you really, all the good stuff is. It's kind of like talking about a trip, but never really taking the trip. It's all the best.
I'm guilty of that, Craig. So don't rub it in, but yes.
It's I'd like to say all the best stuff is on the other side of experience and action.
Beautiful.
Yeah, when you do something, it makes all the difference in the world. Or maybe it's like skydiving. You just talk about it, but you never jump out of the plane. Can you really call yourself a skydiver? Or same thing for meetups. I can't tell you how many people have still never been to a meetup or something like that. That's why I love what you're doing. It's all in-person stuff, getting people out their house among other Bitcoiners.
Speaking of meetups, I know people are hesitant. Maybe they're shy. They don't want to show up with a group that they don't know anyone. And our Bitcoin community is so kind and so loving and so smart. Every time a new person comes to our meetup, they immediately become part of our family. They're highly welcomed. We're engaging with them. So if anyone's maybe feeling down or depressed or not happy, go to a Bitcoin. Forget about forget about like psychiatrists and all that stuff. I'm not giving anyone advice on mental health, but But put that aside, go to a meetup, meet these people, your world and life will change. So just get up and go.
I 100% agree. These are some very kind people, very giving people. There are value creators. They actually create more value in the world than they consume, which is why they're looking for Bitcoin. Because if they spent 100% of your paycheck, Bitcoin's not very useful to you.
Correct.
So it's always good to be around people who bring excess value to their whole life. These are people that have obviously figured something out, and now they're looking to protect it and not have it stolen from. How else would you describe some of the Bitcoiners you work with, just as far as their traits and makeup?
Very clear thinking, very clear thinking. First principle thinking, extremely kind, but everyone in mass adoption in our core group, they're all contributors. They're all contributors, and they all can build, and they all have a specialty, and they just build. They don't talk about stuff and not do it. So, for example, one of my new partners for our new event is the director of this camp that we're having the event on, and he comes from the fiat world. He's a big Bitcoiner, but he's been in the fiat world for a long time. But he was on our call last week, and we got off the call, and he called me up and he said, I can't believe it. He goes, if that was my normal team for what I do, I would have had to give directions to everyone and followed up 19 times and made 14 notes and, distributed them. He's like, everyone just knew what they were doing. They embarked on what they're supposed to do. It's just amazing the way everyone works together so these people know what they're doing. They're very capable. It's an elevated group of people. I'm not saying mass adoption specifically. I'm sure most of the Bitcoin groups are like this. It will elevate your life because we're doers, we're clear thinkers. And as Greg Foss said at our steak dinner with Jason Lowry, you guys can see it on YouTube, he said most of the world are takers. He said 95% of the people on Wall Street are takers. He said, but the Bitcoin community are givers. And that's the big difference of what you'll find.
Yeah. Now, how big is y'all's team over there that you're working on with mass adoption? I mean, not with mass adoption, but what is that? That's all two different teams, correct? Mass adoption and Freedom Fest?
No. We're keep on expanding and growing because we keep on doing new things and we keep on finding new capable people that want to contribute. We probably have 10 to 12 core people that are on our weekly calls and stuff like that.
Nice.
And then we also have the support from a lot of the big, I don't want to say Bitcoin influencers, but the people that people follow and get educated from. And we have the support of them, which makes our tasks much easier by having their support too. So we have a core team, and then we have amazing support from people like Greg Foss, Larry Lepard, David Foley, BJ Dichter, Luke Broyle, Surfer Jim, Michelle Weekly. All those people help. Anders, Bitcoin Kendall. So all these people have helped our group, but we have about 10 people that are core to our team.
Yeah. Well, I hope you consider us as part of that.
I'm sorry. Of course.
Of that team, as we kind of grow our brand and influence. I really love what y'all are doing. I'd love to help in any way I can, at least to just promote and get the word out, because y'all are such kind of like a great example of what Bitcoin community can do and is doing. And this could be happening in other places as well. And I think that is something that y'all have considered, is how do y'all export the success y'all have into other areas of the country or maybe even the world? Is that accurate?
Well, so initially my thought was because I had a company in the US that I sold. I then went to Canada and built an 18-store company up there. So I'm always thinking beyond the US. And my first thought was, well, how do we translate this to, meetups throughout the US and then throughout the world? But so we're going to take one step at a time, but we do have a vision. Hopefully we can have these retreats throughout the country and throughout the world. But we have to perfect the first one before we can try to duplicate it. But yeah, I mean, we do have a vision of expanding, but not right now.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to see how it goes. I mean, y'all are really, this would be kind of your third year, right? This is the beginning of
Right.
your third year. Yeah, so still super young team. And then Bitcoin in and of itself is a very young phenomena planet wide. So I love what you're doing, and I'm so glad that we met and connected. And definitely at a minimum, please tell us what you're doing. Let's do this more often. Come on the Daily Show anytime you want, especially as your events get closer. And if you ever want to pull some of the speakers that are coming to speak at your local event and maybe help promote it on the Bitcoin Daily, I'd be happy to
I,
help orchestrate
Craig, I
that.
think that's a great idea. I'm going to take you up on that, whether it's Matthew. Um, we have a lot of great speakers on tap. So I think that might be a cadence we might kind of get used to. Maybe have you do an interview, have you do an interview with them
Yeah.
Prior, sort of marketing our event and helping your audience.
Yeah.
That's my dog.
Oh, she had to contribute to the conversation.
Yeah, of course.
Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much for your time. Any closing remarks or message to Bitcoiners out there?
Get up, zero. Stack sats and stay humble. I know those aren't brand new words, or those are famous words from Matt Odell, but seriously, get off zero, stack sats, and stay humble. Be thoughtful and grateful for everything you have, just for taking a breath, just for taking a walk, just for going to the grocery store, just for picking up your kids, just all the mundane things in life. Be grateful that you're able to do them.
Yeah.
And just hodl Bitcoin and have a fruitful life.
Amen to that message, brother. I can definitely get behind that one. Well, thank you so much for your time. Let's do this again, maybe in a couple months, just to catch up and let me know how else we can help.
All right. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye. All right. That was Jeffrey over with the mass adoption and Freedom Fest, one of our amazing Bitcoiners up in the Northeast. I met him through the Bitcoin Daily Show. I think it was through Kindle that introduced him. And then he's been a regular contributor to the Bitcoin Daily. He checks in every now and then and kind of gives us an update of what he's working on and often makes comments around Bitcoin and stuff. So just a great example of the types of Bitcoiners out there, the types of communities, the types of works that are being done across the planet that I'd love to highlight and give more exposure to the rest of the world too. So again, I'm Craig LeBlanc, the host of one of the 12 hosts of the Bitcoin Daily Show. We run 8 shows every day, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on X. So if you're available, and then we have a show. James runs a great show on Saturdays, 10 to 12. But if you're looking for a good, strong Bitcoin community online on X Spaces, I can tell you I have built very close friends that I met for the first time in Nashville personally, but have built a good working relationship, and I've enjoyed having my thoughts and their thoughts intermingled every morning. It makes me a better person. It makes me think deeper into areas that I probably couldn't have gotten by myself. Definitely could not have gotten there by myself. So I appreciate the community. I appreciate really listening in on my hosts and the other speakers that step up that just really help me along the way, especially on my Bitcoin journey. So if you're looking for something like that, just download the X app. This is going on YouTube and it's on my Facebook as well. But if you're not on X, go ahead and download X. There's a place that you can swipe right and you'll see something called Spaces. Just type in Bitcoin Daily, the BTC Daily Show. And there we are live every morning. Come up stage, say hello, introduce yourself. You can meet all the other hosts. They do great content every day, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern and 10 to 12 on Saturday. Love to see you there. And I will be there tomorrow morning with Joel and Deanna for the Bitcoin 101 show. And hope to see you then. Thanks a lot, guys. You have a great day.